to create a blog post and transcribe it and moderate it, feel free to use the raise hand feature or write in the chat. But with that said, welcome all. Over to you, Rasmus. Curious to hear more about your new problems.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Jonas. And thanks for inviting me. Just super fun to share a little bit about what's going on here and my departure from the CMS scene. So let me share those slides that Jonas promised I would have ready for this. Can you see this now?
Yes, it says Hello Retail is also in the CMS space.
Almost. All right. I promised Jonas to give a short background about myself. I was the second web designer ever in the first web agency in Denmark back in '97. Then I survived 18 years in agencies in various roles, and sort of slowly got into working more and more on the open source project TYPO3. Like you know a little bit about Olivier here on the call. I had a couple of, or quite a few sort of experiences of us having absolutely amazing users of the TYPO3 platform, such as Lamborghini at some point using it for all of their websites, but we didn't really use that for anything. So I was sort of trying to do all sorts of things related to marketing the open source project and using, you know, customers like a tiny little unimportant Lamborghini. Then I was very involved in the project that spun out of TYPO3 eventually called the NIA CMS, which very directly led me to my 8-year tenure at Magnolia that just stopped. I was head of product management there, chief product and marketing officer, chief marketing officer, and then a year as chief evangelist, where I focused a lot on our relationship with Gartner and Forrester, IDC, and a bunch of other analyst firms. So 4 months ago, then I decided to do something completely different, or relatively different anyway, and I'm now the CMO at a smaller software maker here in Copenhagen called Hello Retail. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about why I left the DXP CMS world. I've been involved with content management systems on the marketing, brand, communication side for, I don't know, 2 decades or something like that. So I do have a lot of warm feelings around CMS, what it sort of can do for customers. But I really felt that it had come to a point where the abstraction level was pretty high. If you look at some of the examples here, it's giving our friend Jared Blank a lot of work, you could say, since he gets to make fun of us when we do weird messaging and in product marketing that is just strange and sort of distant from what customers are feeling and experiencing. So I in many ways, I felt that, okay, this has come to a point now with the maturity of the category where it's getting out of hand, and I wanted to try something different. I'm now in search and e-com and e-commerce personalization, and you can of course very easily argue that that is just as mature category as CMS or DXP. But there's a really big difference when it comes to the marketing of these kinds of products, because there's such a huge amount of immediate practicality for our buyers. So I can very easily, you know, show products in solutions that are very practical and where I don't have to sort of go through the abstraction layer. Since I worked a lot with Gartner and Forrester, I'm perfectly comfortable myself with the abstraction levels that are sometimes needed, but the analysts are not the buyers, as you may know. So I'm also experiencing something really fun here at Hello Retail, which is a very different CEO-CMO relationship. And I thought about it the other day that in 1 week, I had the pleasure of experiencing that my CEO rejected that I increased my marketing goals. I couldn't take on additional responsibilities like I wanted to. He said no to me rebalancing the marketing pipeline, and he also wanted me to relax a bit more after having had a sick day. So that is definitely a new experience for me as a CMO, and quite a lot of fun. Here's what I wanted to talk about today, problems in product marketing. And I'll try to go on for like 5 minutes or so we have time for some discussion. All right, so I'm a huge fan of Richard Rumelt, strategy guy. So he wrote that the core strategy work is always the same, discovering the critical factors in a situation and designing a way of coordinating and focusing actions to deal with those factors. Easier said than done. But that sort of permeates a lot of my work, the thinking that comes out of his absolutely brilliant work on strategy. So when you're in a mature software market, you have a huge need for stronger differentiation. And I love this little illustration there on the right. There's such a knee-jerk reaction from marketers that you're sort of trying to improve your weakness to get to sameness, so that you are able to present the same as what your competitors are also saying. But what you actually need to do is the opposite and go for that less likely reaction there on the right, where you're really leaning into your strengths and creating this more lopsided result, which comes with risk, of course, but it's much more interesting. The problem is, however, that if you think about critical factors, that even if you have solid product differentiation, which I very much believe we have at Hello Retail in something that's called the product intelligence data set, it is just not enough to cut through the noise. So I've been looking at, okay, what are critical factors that might actually help us cut through the noise? So a little detour here, if you don't mind. Some years ago, I had a really good conversation with this guy down there on the right called Mark Stanier. He's a great thinker in terms of tech, B2B marketing, messaging at Gartner. And I started thinking, based on some discussions I had with him, what if the strategy and our differentiation could grow out of an obsession with problems? So if you think about that for a second and sort of look at product marketing broadly in B2B, it was always, of course, obviously about connecting pain points and value and customers and solutions, but something really odd has happened over the last, 5-10 years or so. And I feel that this kind of product marketing messaging really has got to stop. And I also think it presents a opportunity for strong differentiation, at least for us here in the e-commerce personalization game. I took some examples from different kinds of vendors and software categories here, but you all know this stuff, right? And many of you are probably in the CMS space, so you know very well that all of the vendors are saying pretty much the same in really convoluted sentences in using basically what is strategic messaging and sort of modern B2B advertising language that has unfortunately allowed to permeate and pollute the field of product marketing. What tends to happen, I feel, I've also worked with agencies like Pitch Maps that does strategic messaging. What tends to happen is that you sort of set the tone from the strategic messaging that you use on like the homepage and your sales decks and whatnot. And then that slides into product marketing, where product marketers sort of come to feel that, oh, well, this is how we sound. I better write my product marketing copy in this way, which is just really abstracting it from that immediate practicality that I'm after, at least. So I was asking myself, oh my God, are we actually now reenacting the parody of, Silicon Valley, the HBO show ourselves now? Because our product marketing copy is really starting to sound a lot like the parody. So the core change here that I'm starting with in my new job is about refocusing the top of funnel, mid funnel messaging on customer problems. And I really want to let the customer problems breathe. And that is then sort of connected both to customer segmentation. We're also using a tool like Nevada to do these product tours that are then based in sort of oriented around very specific customer problems. So there's a lot of ways that we can sort of use this as a way to coordinate actions, which again was the whole idea of Richard Rumel's strategy definition earlier. I asked a lot of my colleagues around, okay, what problems are we actually solving? Got great input from them. And then currently we're going through this test phase here where we are building these problem pages where you're not getting to the solution until you start scrolling down. So we're basically it's not about doing something completely new. It's about rebalancing product marketing and the messaging and really letting the customer problem, we want to empathize with it and we want to let it breathe before we get to the solution, because we obviously do have a solution that we're trying to pitch, and that we're trying to train our BDRs to search for these prospects that are most likely to face very particular problems that we've got good solutions for, which hopefully should turn into something that we can build upon and end up with a large catalog of 30, 40 different particular problems that we face. We might cluster them per industry so that we get to, go in front of prospects in particular industries and present the 5 most common problems that they typically have and all of that stuff. So there's a bunch of ways that this can really be used to coordinate between the different departments here at Hello Retail. Yeah, so that's my short little sort of intro to the rebellion I feel that I'm trying to start in terms of improving product marketing and messaging and what I'm up to. That's it, Jonas.
Thank you very much, Rasmus. Super interesting. I think you delivered on the bullets I had promised, or we both had promised in the original invite. When a category gets beyond peak BS, the big problem with problems, and then you also shared immediate practicality. So this leaves us with time for Q&A. Anybody? Questions, comments, reflections? Feel free to jump in. This is the part where if nobody volunteers, I sometimes think that random, but I'll just say from my note. Yeah, all right, you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As president of the Rasmus fan club, I'm representing the group organization here today. I just want to see, what do you think are like parallel problems? Like when you look at what you're doing now and DXP, what's the biggest crossover?
Yeah, well, there are many common problems across these two software categories. The problem for the DXP category, quite obviously, is that it serves so many different use cases, and the amount of problems is insane. So it gets very difficult for the vendors to organize that in a meaningful way. That's what I've felt the acute pain around, and that sort of in return then pushes the abstraction level upwards, and then it becomes an architecture discussion. And then all of this also really honestly, I've worked a ton with Gartner and Forrester, and many of you on the call here know this, of course. a lot of this is really, really heavily influenced by the analyst firms in a pretty unfortunate way, in some ways at least. So there's a lot of overlap or of problems, and I could totally see that it would be possible to do something similar in the DXP CMS space. Yeah, why not? Does that make any sense, Dean?
Yeah, I'm just talk to me about the analyst. Like, it's interesting because I know that you had a long odyssey with analysts at Magnolia. What do you see in the difference in the analyst space? Is there a material difference between analysts, how they approach the space and what they're looking for?
Come again, how they approach the space and what they're looking for?
Yeah, is there a different tone of analysts between kind of retail and DXP? Because I feel like retail, whenever you do some with e-commerce, you have the luxury of a fantastic, amazing analytic, right? At any given time, you know how much a customer is worth to you. You literally know your profit margin on that customer. Every customer self-quantifies in the sense that they come there and they buy something and, hey, that's how much they're worth to you. When you're looking at like the DXP space, and when you're dealing with something that it doesn't involve e-commerce, the example I always use is let's say you own a construction company that builds interstate highways. Well, nobody puts 100 miles of interstate highway in their shopping cart and checks out. It's a much more delayed value prop. And so when we look at analysts, are they looking for different things? I feel like in commerce, success is driven simply by numbers. You sell a bunch of stuff and you win, and you don't sell a bunch of stuff and you lose. But with like a content-based DXP space, it's a much more kind of vacuous, kind of amorphous value prop. Are we just like selling a state of mind? Are we just like selling brand awareness? And how does that play out with analysts? Do analysts just look at how much your customers are making? Do they look at very hard metrics? How's that work?
Yeah, I'm curious to figure that out as well, because I have not yet been in contact with all of them. There's a big difference that I wanted to sort of pursue with the change as well, which had to do with dealing with smaller clients. I wanted a more immediate connection between marketing investments and initiatives and results, which is super slow in the enterprise space, as you know, where you have to sort of do something in marketing and then wait for quite a while and see the initiative unfold over several years. This is very different here, and the customers that we have are just not that influenced by analysts because they're smaller. So I'm curious about that too, and I simply don't know yet. I haven't been in touch with those kinds of retail or e-commerce analysts yet, but it's certainly on the plan.
Thank you, Rasmus. Thanks, Dean. Looking at the participant list, I was just trying to browse through who is in marketing, and I saw your name there, Nicole. I know you've also been in the DXP space in different angles, joining us from very early, so I'm also trying to help you stay awake.
Oh, no, I'm in Boston, actually, so better time zone versus West Coast right now.
That works. As a marketeer, what are your reflections? Do you agree with the premise here that Rasmus put up?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So two things. One is the analysts. Just being in that space for so long, it is such an interesting industry, and you just have so many different analyst firms out there of varying opinions with the Gartner Magic Quadrant, the Forrester Wave, and IDC, but then you have all the smaller firms as well. And in terms of, Dean, you were mentioning this too, in terms of like, they're looking at product roadmap. They're also, I think the importance, and some people miss this, is customer stories. The customer references hugely matter to the analysts. And then, obviously with the Gartner Magic Quadrant, they're looking at ability to execute, as well as, are you taking their feedback? Like, it's one thing to brief the analysts, but it does not, that's not going to move forward if you're not taking their inquiry calls. The huge value of inquiry calls is, hey, like, what's your feedback? Listening to them and then going back to them like 6 months later and being like, we incorporated all of that. So, just that's the analyst discussion. But then Rasmus, what you were talking about, I'm curious to hear your thoughts in terms of, would you ever like do some multivariate testing with your web pages in which you're talking about the solution because you're starting off with a problem, which is, really interesting. And then you dive into the solution at the very end. Would you ever test the page in which you start almost like at a very high level, the solution, and then you dive right under, because like the whole banner is the problem. Could you divide that in half and start with the solution, then dive into the problem, and then go back into the solution at the very bottom? So curious to hear your thoughts on that, and like whether you would test that or whether that's already happening right now, and that's why you want to change it to this with the start of the problem first.
Yeah, for sure. That's great input. I could totally see us testing it for sure. Also using tools like Winter with a Y to test the messaging before we publish new problem pages, for example. But I would be super curious to see the results from a sort of a clean split test on this. So far, I'm in a test phase where I just want to see if it works, that we can give our BDRs something much more surgical to work with instead of the high level value prop that they usually start with.
Cool. Awesome. And also one more question. When did you join the company again? Like when did you leave Magnolia and join Hello Retail?
I started full-time on 1st of March, I think. It's not been
that long. That's awesome. I'd be curious to hear your, the differences of this space, December timeframe. So that'd be really cool to sync back again with you. Yeah,
totally. Love to.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other comments, reflections on Rasmus joining the, do you call it search and recommendation space? Is that what Hello Retail does?
Well, overall, it's e-commerce personalization. It's a bunch of different things, also beyond search and recommendations. There's a longer story to that, of course.
Very good. Anybody else? I was thinking we could just go a little bit more into the problems, Rasmus. So when you say like, what's your problem with problems? Can you just elaborate a little bit also for those who were like, okay, what did he just say 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's pretty common, I think, that you as a product marketer, that you want to sort of attack the customer's problem. But behind this is also a certain rebellion against an Americanization of the language that we tend to use in product marketing, where it's all about opportunities and the upside. So when I've had discussions with CMOs from around the world about problems, there's been this really stark difference between the input I've received from the US side versus elsewhere, where everyone in the US that I spoke with, CMOs mostly, they would sort of immediately say, no, you can't do that. You have to turn it into an opportunity immediately, which is obviously the exact thing I'm going up against here, because I actually want to focus on the customer problems and sort of acknowledge that they have problems they want to solve before we get to that solution and the opportunity that we present to them with our software or solutions or what have you. So but I mean, it comes down to, let's build a list of the problems that we as a company are extremely good at solving, doubling down on that, and then sort of turning that into a positive spiral where we can end up with more and more customers in particular industries where we have proven over and over again that these particular problems, we can solve them really well. And we can tell their prospects that we've just solved them for some of their competitors and so forth.
Cool. Thank you, Rasmus. Any other questions, comments, reflections? Matthias, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I didn't have any questions, but I think it's very correct what Rasmus is saying. And I mean, there is this thing between diving in extremely deep and just focusing on the problem, and the other side, which is very often formulating yourself in a way that is so marketese that you actually don't describe your product at all. And I have done a bit of research about how other CMSs than TYPO3 do their marketing, and I sometimes have problems understanding what they're saying, which is a problem when you've been in the market for as long as I have. And on the other side, it's not relevant what they're presenting. It's really striking.
And then thank you, Matthias. And Katarina, you kindly shared a link to the Atlantic, which I think kind of makes the point that this is a broader business dude's problem.
Yeah, people just talk. If you read that article, it's babble, 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 value creation, babble, babble, drive value. It's like, well, what does value mean?
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'll make sure to add the link. Let's hear quickly from Romain and then Rahel afterwards. Romain?
Very quickly for Rasmus, the CMS space, has been around for like 20, 25 years now. Which problem do you think are left to solve? I agree with you that we need to empathize with the customer, but somehow I would be scared to look a bit like it's 1990 again or something like that. But maybe it's not a problem.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I really loved about Contentful when they started, not now, but just when they were getting started over the first couple of years, was that they did such an amazing job at just recirculating old problems and just presenting them as if they had completely brand new solutions to very well-known problems. And just because the problem has been around for a long time, new customers, new organizations, new mergers and acquisitions, they're going to face the same problem. So it's still relevant to talk about the same problems, unfortunately, which is going to be boring for you as a product marketer sometimes, but relevant it still is.
And then last but not least, let's jump to, I think, Ireland. Rahel, is that where you're at these days?
Usually I'm in Ireland. Right now I'm in London. Kind of being a digital nomad these days. I wanted to kind of build on what Matthias and Kristen, Karen, I'm sorry, the lady that says K French on your name.
Katarina, yeah.
Katarina, so Katarina. So that whole idea of how companies present themselves, you start as a business person to index kind of the way they speak, the way they present themselves, with how much nonsense you're going to have to sit through before you can find out what they actually do. So, when I look at something and I want to know, is this a headless CMS, for example? So does it say headless CMS, or does it say, what do you say, blah, 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 value, blah, 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 value? And it's like, okay, that salesperson is going to insist that they call me, they're going to, and all I want to do is have a reference point of something for my students, for example. Like, I'm not buying, I just want, right? So you start to index things that way. And I've just been doing a whole bunch of comparative Google searches this morning and taking screenshots for my company of kind of doing a comparison between company A, B, C, D, E, F to show them that this is the frustration part for potential clients and people who just want, information, because as you say, it's not like you put it in your shopping cart. Dean said you don't put it in your shopping cart and go. So it's going to be a process, but that whole, like, how much fapping do I have to do to actually get that piece of information I want, it can be almost directly compared to how much they've obfuscated the actual functions on their website.
I love that.
It's a great theory. How much time you have to spend listening to blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Rahel. Any closing remarks from your side, Rasmus?
No, this has been fun. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone.
Thank you very much for finding the time throughout the world, old and new friends of Rasmus. I'll make sure to type this up. Let's keep the conversation going. I think there's something here that's relevant also beyond business dudes or even marketeers. So I think there's an important problem here that that's worth paying attention to. So similar to Nicole, but what others have indicated, we're all curious to follow your success, Rasmus, and hope to get an update soon.
Thanks. I hope it works.
Yes, we're cheering for you, Rasmus. All the best. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.